most common questions we get is how were the calculations for Aplos NCA validated? We did several things when we were building our solution. The first thing is we did hand calculations using R and Excel for specific PK parameters for known data sets. The next thing we did is we calculated those same parameters using some R packages that are publicly available and using Phoenix Win Non-Lin. We then compared all of those results together to identify any discrepancies or differences between the solutions, and we found that all of the calculations are exactly the same. So we've specifically programmed the code to be the correct calculations. We've compared it to our internal calculations, and we've compared it to external programs with the same data sets and arrived at the same answers. So the same parameter values that you would get out of Phoenix Win Non-Lin, for example, you'll get those same answers from Aplos NCA. You'll get the same answers if you hand programmed it in R. The only difference is the ease of use of the software and the speed with which you get those answers. So Aplos Analytics stores data in S3 buckets on Amazon, their cloud storage service, but we also store information in a database. So in both cases, in the S3 buckets and in the database, we have version control or version history turned on. So every version or every save of a file is recorded. That way we have a full audit trail of every transaction, everything that happens with every file in storage, as well as every action in the database. We don't allow overwriting of files. If you upload the same file 3 times, we will create 3 copies of the file on our file system and record each upload separately. Even though it's exactly the same file, we actually store 3 copies of those. And this helps us for multiple reasons. First of all, every file upload gets a unique ID because it was uploaded at a different time. Even though the file has the same name and maybe it's the same thing, there's the possibility that you change the file between the uploads, and we want to keep those files separate. And the second advantage is if anyone could, a lot of the ransomware systems that are out there, what they do is they grab files and they overwrite them, adding malicious code in, and then you have to pay a ransom to remove that malicious code. If that were to happen, we would easily see that there's another version there, and we could just roll back to the prior version that didn't have the malicious code. So we're protecting you against any sort of ransom or malicious attack. In addition, because we have the version history turned on, if anything was to happen, we could always roll back to a previous version. You're never going to lose anything. And this is how we maintain 21 CFR Part 11 compliance in our system, but also we secure the system against external attacks that could potentially occur and put your data at risk. So electronic records compliance is important. So in the United States, it's called 21 CFR Part 11, and other countries have similar rules. But essentially, electronic records compliance means that you have a full audit trail of all actions on electronic records, and that also it includes a section around electronic signatures that replicate a human signature. So Aplos NCA is fully compliant with the electronic records sections of 21 CFR Part 11. We do not employ or use electronic signatures because we don't think they're needed. What that means is every action a user takes is recorded. And this is a really easy thing to do because every action in Aplos is an API request. So there's a request for something to be done. I want to upload a file. I want to download a file. I want to run an analysis. I want to view data. All of those requests are logged in our system by the user that made the request, the time and date of the request, the location the request was made, and then what the results are. So we log all of that for every single thing. We also log every single file. So every file gets a unique identifier, and it has the user that created that file, when that file was created, and where it's located. And all that's recorded in our database. And then if needed, we can pull those records for you And then you have a full audit of everything that has happened in your account. And we can pull those records by date, by user, by file, anything that you might need. And what that allows is full compliance with electronics records rules, but minimal effort on your part. So you don't have to go in and enter a username and password every time you do something, because we're logging you through your authentication for the API request. We know who you are because you've logged in and you have that authenticated JSON web token. And so we're fully compliant with that, but there's almost zero effort on your side to achieve that compliance, which makes it easy for you to do. So data security is of the utmost importance for Aplos Analytics. We want to ensure that your data is secure from the time that you send it up to your account on Aplos NCA, as well as while it resides there, and again when you download it, and that it can't be intercepted. So we first of all use what's called temporary URLs. So when you request to do an upload, such as an analysis data set, we provide a temporary URL that only lasts for a few minutes. If you use that URL within a few minutes, then the upload can be successful. If you don't use it, that URL becomes invalid and it cannot be used. So this ensures that only the people that request the URL can use it in that short period of time. In addition, all files are encrypted before they're uploaded, and then they're also encrypted when they're in storage on our server. So that's called encrypted in transit and encrypted at rest. So your files are always encrypted unless you have the encryption key, which you would need to authenticate to get that. You can't even see what's in those files. The same thing for downloads. When you want to download your results package, it's encrypted, you download it, and then you unencrypt it locally because you have the encryption key. Now, you don't have to set up anything, you don't have to do anything, we handle all of that for you, but that's the way that we ensure that your data is secure in transit and while it is sitting there in your account. Aplos NCA uses Amazon Cognito for its authentication. So what that means is Aplos does not store your username and password, and we only store your username, and then we ask Amazon Cognito to store the password and to authenticate. And so when you actually enter your username and password on the website or through the API, you're actually sending that to Amazon Cognito, and then Amazon Cognito sends a JSON web token to the Aplos application and says this user is authenticated. So we rely on Amazon Cognito to do that authentication process for us. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, Amazon Cognito handles billions upon billions of authentications every day for multiple web applications, including the Amazon Web Store. So it already handles authentications, it's already got the security around it, and it ensures that your username and password won't be released to the public. In addition, since we don't have your password, we can't be hacked to release it. If we're hacked, all they have is an email address or a username. They don't have a password associated with it. So therefore, we protect your password by only having it in one location. And then the other piece is using JSON web tokens. That means you don't have to continually pass your password back and forth each time you need to make a new web request to the API. You pass a JSON web token that's temporary, and it authenticates your use. Now, these JSON web tokens only last a few minutes, but each time you perform an action, that token gets updated and refreshed and says, oh, they just used this, so this is still a good token. And so that allows you as a user to keep using the software on your normal pace of using it. But if you go away from your computer for a long period of time, or you log out of the web page or something like that, you're going to have to log back in again with your username and password, get a new token, and then you can start working again. So this makes it secure, very secure, but it also makes it easy for you to use and sort of invisible. We handle all that behind the scenes for you. So we're happy to use Amazon Cognito for our authentication purposes that protects you, and it also ensures that we can provide you high quality access. because Aplos NCA is a cloud-based application, we can replicate your data and the database on a separate AWS region so that you have an instant backup available. So we do those backups not on a nightly basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. It's an ongoing live basis. And we essentially replicate the data and the database at all times so that if anything was to happen, you would instantly have your data available in a different region. So let's just imagine that your instance of Aplos NCA is located at an Amazon data center in the southeast of the United States. And let's say there was a fire that happened around the facility and the facility was completely burned to the ground. And so those servers and those files, they're all gone. Well, we've replicated your data in maybe the northwest of the United States at a different data center. So the only data that you could possibly lose is data that you uploaded to that southeastern US location before the fire started, but before a data transfer occurred to replicate it. So maybe one file might be missing, but everything else is going to be there. And we just switch your URL and say, don't point to the data center in the southeast, point to the data center in the northwest, and you're up and running in a matter of minutes. So now a fire like that has never happened that we're aware of with AWS facilities, and their uptime is impeccable, but we want to protect against the eventual possibilities that natural disasters do happen, and these computers are not infallible, and so we replicate across multiple regions for you to ensure that you have maximum uptime and that also you never lose your data. Aplos NCA uses an AWS infrastructure for all of its services, and AWS has continuous monitoring and audits of their infrastructure through internal systems, and they're really not susceptible to DNS attacks and things like that because they monitor that and they shift incoming resources to ensure that that doesn't happen. And so we can guarantee 99.99% uptime for all of our services and all of your data at all times. And even if there was some natural disaster, we could shift you to a different AWS region. If one region was having some sort of problem, we could shift you to another region immediately, and your uptime, it would work again immediately if something like that was to happen. So we know that AWS takes a very proactive stance at protecting access to your systems, and we rely on that, and we work with AWS to ensure that you always have availability to your tools. So let me talk about validation of Aplos NCA. So validation is a process that's required by regulatory agencies for a software user or a company to confirm that their software provides correct calculations. So Aplos NCA has built in a validation module that's free to use for all users. And the process essentially is it reaches out to a public repository that has 6 known data sets, and it has the calculated PK parameters for those 6 data sets, or the known results. It downloads those to your instance, and then it recalculates those parameters based on the data set and your instance. And then it compares the calculated parameters to the known results, and then compares them for any differences. Differences greater than 0.01% relative difference are flagged as an issue or a fail for comparison. If everything is within 0.01% difference, then they're considered identical. And so we run the validation goes out, it runs those 6 analyses, it compares all of those to the known results, and then it gives you a pass or fail report for each of the 6 data sets. And then it gives you an overall pass or fail. All 6 data sets have to pass for the overall to pass. And all this is done for you in a matter of a minute or 2. You press the button and say, I want to validate, and it goes, it downloads the files, and then it runs all those comparisons, and then it gives you a report. Not only does it give you a PDF report that shows that you've passed validation, but it actually allows you to download the files, which shows the actual calculations that were made, and then all of the comparisons. and whether or not each value was a pass or a fail. And so you have all the evidence you need for your IT or quality assurance group to show them that you have validated Aplos NCA in your hands. And you can do this anytime you want with any version of the software. And all the results are retained for you in your account, and you can download them at any time. So that's how we implement validation for NCA. Now, another question is whether or not the FDA accepts results from Aplos NCA. So absolutely yes. So we have customers that are using Aplos NCA and submitting documents to the FDA and are using this for NCA analysis. The FDA nor any regulatory agency comes out and says, we authorize this software. They're not in the business of authorizing software. It's a responsibility of customers to ensure that their software does accurate calculations. So we've taken the burden to ensure that it has accurate calculations, and we provide that evidence to you. You can then provide that evidence through your validation documentation to the FDA, but the FDA absolutely accepts it. They accept PK analysis done in Excel. They accept it done in homegrown systems. They accept it in Phoenix Wind on Lin, PK Analytics, R, Aplos NCA. Any package that accurately calculates the parameters is acceptable. The question is, how much time and effort do you have to put into validating your package and to actually running the analyses? So our package is acceptable and it has been in use, and we're actually working with the FDA so that they can evaluate the use of Aplos NCA for their purposes inside the agency to accelerate their work. We have two main types of subscriptions to Aplos NCA. So for individual users, we have a professional subscription. And then for teams, we have a team or we have an enterprise subscription. And the team and enterprise subscription are similar other than the number of users that are in the system. Essentially, a professional is a single user on a shared tenant. And so what that means is that there's logical separation for the data for each user within that. So it's like a walled garden where each user's data is behind a separate wall. But when they run an analysis, they use the same computer to run the analysis. So you're sharing resources with other professional users, but you never share data and you never share data storage location. They're always separate. On a team account, you not only get separation of users, but all those users' data is on a separate AWS account, and the computation resources is also separate and isolated for that team. So now you're only sharing with other team members. You're not sharing with anyone else. And that way it gives you more control over the computation, and you have more computation resources available to you and your team. The differences between the team account and the enterprise account are simply based on size and number of analyses, and also some extra services that we might provide you in order to enhance or customize your experience with the tool. So that's for larger companies that might need, automation and shared accounts and viewing user data. That's something that's available in our enterprise account. So also on a team account and an enterprise account, you get an administrator function. Administrators can add users, can deactivate users, and can look at their usage of those users. While on a professional account, you don't have the ability to administer multiple users because you're just a single user. Changing anything in life is very difficult in most cases. The reality is it actually appears more difficult than it is, but that appearance prevents us from changing. And so when you're changing from one software to another, it can be concerning because you know how to do 10 things in your current software package, but you're not sure how to do those 10 things in a new software package. And so there's some fear with moving. Our recommendation with Aplos NCA is to bring that software in alongside your current solution and use them side by side. And then understand, hey, what are the limitations of each set of software? So if you're using a Phoenix user right now, perhaps you have a very involved QC process where another user has to go in and click through multiple screens of Phoenix Win on Lin to verify that you've done the correct analysis. And that might take hours to do that as a QC process. With Aplos NCA, there's only one text file that they have to look at. So your processes might change. Maybe it's a lot easier to QC with Aplos NCA because you're just reviewing a human readable text file and you're not having to open up software packages and look through stuff. But then again, there's other things that may be different in how you do it. You're used to doing creating plots and tables and figures in Phoenix, but there's a different method to do those in Aplos NCA. If you actually bring them on board where you're using them together and you can try things, you'll learn what's great about Aplos NCA and maybe where Phoenix might be a better solution for your needs. And then you identify, okay, what's my use case for each of these? They don't do exactly the same thing, they do similar things, and which one do I use more often? And what we're finding is for the routine non-compartmental analysis, Aplos NCA is faster, more efficient for users to get their work done. And then some complex things where they might need to do some modeling, they might go back to their Phoenix Win on Lin instance because it does have those modeling capabilities that you might need for occasional projects. And so it could be that you're maintaining two licenses for different reasons, but my guess is you probably don't need to use Win on Lin as much if you're using Aplos NCA for the majority of your NCA work. So bring them online together and then slowly transition to the one that makes more sense for your organization.